Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Around the Ballpark podcast. My name is Mike Redmond, and I am writing solo tonight. Darren has a prior engagement, so he will not be able to join us tonight. But we do have tonight a very special guest. Kevin Klein is here from the Incline Dodgers podcast. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are 79 episodes in, and we have yet to do a Dodgers podcast. So looking forward to this one as a Mets fan. Just nothing but respect for the Dodgers all these years, and so we have so much to talk about. But Kevin, before we get to know you a little bit and dive into the good stuff, always got to make sure, first and foremost, a shout out to our sponsors, our folks over at Nashville Tax Solutions. We couldn't do this without them. We're just so very grateful for the folks there at Nashville Tax Solutions. Christopher Bennett and his team are just amazing. And they've believed in us from day one when we had just under 100 subscribers, and he's loving life, living the dream, working really hard. I shared this photo just the other day, but I'll share it here again. Reached out to him just to see how he was doing, and he shoots me this text that he's hanging out with Jelly Roll. So he's doing good. He's living life to the fullest and doing really well. So Chris, just wanted to give you a shout out. So, but again, let me go ahead and just let you guys know what they're about, whether you need to file years of missing returns, a current year return, or you need relief from a tax lien or levy. Nashville Tax Solutions has the solution for you. Their expert team of tax professionals are dedicated to providing personalized solutions tailored to your unique situation. Don't let tax problems weigh you down. Contact Nashville Tax Solutions today and let them guide you toward a brighter financial future. They have offices now in Palm Bay and in Fort Pierce, and they can be reached at 855-627-4829. You can check out their website, NashvilleTaxSolutions.com, or you can email them at info@NashvilleTaxSolutions.com. Nashville Tax Solutions, where tax resolution is achieved. So once again, thank you so much, Christopher Bennett and team. And if you forget any of that information while Kevin and I are talking here tonight, you can just look down at the bottom ticker there and get that information as well. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, want to start just kind of by saying thank you for being on. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and where anyone can find you on social media.
Thanks so much, Mike, for having me on. Yeah, you picked the right Dodgers fan. Been a Dodgers fan my whole life. I know that's cliche, but really started getting into them in the late 90s when I was a young kid. Sean Green, Kevin Brown, and then more modern day, of course, with like Corey Seager was a big hero of mine in 2020. Been doing my own Dodgers podcast since the start of the 2019 season, the Incline Dodgers podcast. You can find us on X or Twitter at the Incline Pod. We have an Instagram page, a YouTube channel. I'll just search the Incline Dodgers in Apple, Spotify, and my own personal account at Klein25, where I rant and have hot takes about the Dodgers.
That is, yes. Sometimes Darren and I call it talking to the clouds. Sometimes as Mets fans, we've had plenty of opportunities to talk to the clouds over the years. So this year we're a little bit happier with our lives than normal. Because, people forget, like, as good as the Mets finished off last year before falling to the Dodgers, they had a really rough 2 months. They were, I think, sixth worst record in MLB towards the end of May. And then thankfully everything turned around for the better. But I see several of you on here, so thank you for joining us. Joe, I see you on there as well. So thank you. He is a Yankees fan, so he's split the difference here between the Mets and the Dodgers. So first and foremost, Kevin, I wanted to start with one thing we like to do here is just to kind of share a couple stories. Not so much just this, the normal like question answer. So is there something that comes to mind, whether it's how you became a Dodgers fan in the first place, maybe a specific game experience at the ballpark, perhaps at a bar, restaurant, at home that really sticks out for you. So kind of a two-part question: how you became a Dodgers fan, and then like one story that you could share that's like a cool little Dodger story.
Yeah, this will be a pretty quick timeline. My father took me to Dodger Stadium as a very young kid, so we saw some of the Fox Sports owned, and then Frank McCourt Dodgers. And then with the whole divorce issue and the Dodgers being kind of bad, it was tougher being a fan of them. And then the Guggenheims bought them, and that kind of lit a fire, I think, within the city and the whole fan base getting back on board with the Dodgers. And you could see them start to really put together a competitive team. And then in 2013, I moved to Long Beach to go to the university around there. Came down with mononucleosis and was bedridden for like a month. So I literally had nothing I could do except wait for the Dodgers to come play because it was the middle of the summer. And I think that really like sparked a diehard passion. I was always a Dodgers fan. Like the 2008 and the 2009 NLCS, I was super stoked for those years. But getting bedridden with that illness, and then just waiting for the Dodgers each day, and then like Yasiel Puig getting called up, and Adrian Gonzalez and Kershaw having a Cy Young year, and Zach Greinke being a great pitcher as well. I think from then on, it was like I rarely missed Dodger games from that point moving forward.
That's, it's funny. You share one thing I'll share here in this moment. So would get the MLB Network for years, always just putting on, watch my own team, and then I put on whatever. And it started, the respect for Vin Scully started in the other direction, because here on the East Coast, of course, most of the Dodger games would start at 10 p.m. So it was always, I'd watch my Mets, and then I would put that on because I always have to fall asleep with the TV on. So I'd put on the MLB Dodger games, and his voice, like, it would just, like, he'd tell stories. I remember he shared this story about Ryan Klesko. They were the opposing team at the time. And he's like, when Ryan was a little Klesko, he loved to play video games, and his favorite game was Frogger. And he just went on this epic rant, and it would put me to sleep every night, not because I was bored at all. It was just like, I enjoy it. And it was almost like he had someone right there in the booth next to him, even when he didn't. And so I always respected that, and would make sure I would stay up on when they did play the Mets. I would make sure.
And because you brought up Vince Scully, I'm really glad you did that. That kind of reminded me. That's the other reason I became a diehard Dodgers fan. It's like you watch the game for the baseball component, but I also was really tuning in to just hear Vince Scully commentate. That was one of the best parts of being a Dodgers fan during his era.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's so many moments you could think of Kirk Gibson. There's so many moments you could pick over the years that if you weren't a fan, that would be a team you would choose. And unfortunately here where I live in Florida, the closest team to me for minor league ball or spring training was Vero Beach. And so I had a blast for years with Dodger dogs and going to the park and literally being one row behind, like you could touch their back of their head. Like that's how close you would be. You just get there an hour too early, get batting practice, and it was just the best experience. And then when I heard that they were moving, I got as many tickets as I could, and I think they actually left a little sooner than they were supposed to. But I just loved every minute got my first foul ball there. Just loved every bit about that experience. And I missed, and this area is not the same because first the Dodgers left, and then the Nationals, which were in Vieira, they left. And then little by little, a lot of the teams went to the West Coast or to Arizona. So we get a lot of the same games now. The Mets pretty much play the same 4 teams in the spring, but miss the rotation of the other guys in there. But it was always getting that Dodger dog with the bun was this big and the dog was this big. And I just loved every minute of it. So I wanted to, let's talk let's go back in time last year first. So of course, 2024 World Series champions, Los Angeles Dodgers. And it was one thing that was the narrative going around was that they wrapped things up so early. It was just going to be another year where they'd fall apart in the postseason. They would be, lose in that second round. And that of course did not happen. They had a tremendous offseason, took out the Mets in the National League Championship Series, and then, of course, went on to beat the Yankees. So they got to double dip both of the New York teams there. So your expectations going, if you can go back, rewind to last year, your expectations at the beginning of the season, did you see that coming? Were you really like optimistic, like this really is going to be the year, versus once you got to that, NLCS, you're like, okay, this is definitely going to be the time.
Yeah. So the expectations going into 2024 definitely felt like this team had the talent to be a World Series contender and winner. And then they played for the most part throughout the regular season like they were a force to be reckoned with. Shohei Ohtani coming to Los Angeles, of course, was a huge deal and really turned this lineup into a juggernaut that it became. The 50 home run, 50 stolen base plus season that Ohtani had, and cruised his way to winning the National League MVP. The rotation looked really good on paper. And then, of course, the injury stockpiled. Yamamoto missed 3 months. Tyler Glasnow got hurt in late July, early August, and then he wasn't able to pitch in the postseason. We had Gavin Stone, who was having a really good year for the Dodgers. He got hurt. And then River Ryan was a prospect who got called up, and he looked electric in his like 5 or 6 starts he made. And then he unfortunately had to undergo Tommy John surgery. So getting Jack Flaherty at the deadline and Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech, I think really saved our season. If Andrew Friedman didn't make those moves, I don't think the Dodgers would have had the forces to win the World Series. And then kind of fast forwarding to the postseason itself, I didn't want to play the Padres in the first round, or for the first round for the Dodgers, the NLDS, because I felt like they were our biggest threat in the National League. So, of course, it lines up that we had to play the Padres. And then when we were down 2-1, I was pretty nervous, thought they were going to choke yet again, but the Dodgers fought back. I think they held the Padres scoreless in the 2 next games, and it was like 24 consecutive scoreless innings.
Yeah.
And then from that moment on, I felt we knocked out the Padres. I think we can beat anyone else. No disrespect to the Mets. You were a formidable opponent, but I felt pretty confident. And then when we got the Yankees, any Yankees fans watching, sorry, this is going to offend you, but you were the weakest team we've had to face. So I knew we were going to win the World Series unless everything just went wrong.
So we have Joe Alessandro in the chat, diehard Yankee fan, but he was the first one to tell. Even though his team got to where they went, he knows the better team won. Like, it just wasn't their year. Even though they made it that far, they've had other seasons a little bit better. It just so happened that they made it there. But no, the whole season. And of course, you look at a team like the Dodgers. Like, if you're just, if you have no betting interest in this series, and you look at it and you go, man, you don't want Mookie Betts to beat you. You don't want Ohtani to beat you. You don't want this one to beat you. I don't know about me personally. Like, the guy I feared the most was Keke Hernandez. Like, I just felt like, man, that's that guy. And there's always that one guy, right? It was Justin Turner for a while with the Dodgers. Like, but every time it was Chipper Jones on the Braves. It was Justin Turner. Those are the guys that just, oh my God, you don't want to see them at the plate because it's just going to be. And that's what happened. And you mentioned the Mets were a formidable opponent on some of the nights. It's funny, though, I've never seen a more lopsided series that was also competitive. Like, I think 3 or 4 of the losses were like 8 or 9 run deficits. It was just weird how that goes. And yep, exact quote from the Yankee fan: Yankees were weak. So that comes from someone who wears the Yankees hat all the time. So it is what it is there. And of course, judge what his numbers during the season versus what happened in the postseason, and that's all. Everybody kind of knows where that's at. But yeah, last season, and of course, it's the viewer's dream, right? Like, for ratings, like, you can't get better than Yankees Dodgers World Series here in 2024, and a lot of people are thinking that was going to be the case again this year. I think a little bit otherwise, but so I want to ask you. So, looking at this year, and we'll talk about the current team here in just a minute, but right now, National League or American League, doesn't matter. Who is the most, you mentioned the Padres being the one team you didn't want to face in 2025. Who's that one team that you don't want to face in the postseason, whether it's National League or ultimately in the World Series?
The record isn't showing it right now. I believe they're 19-18, but perfect timing with your question, because the team I'm going to pick is facing the Dodgers starting tonight. The Arizona Diamondbacks begin a 4-game series with the Dodgers. And my preseason prediction was that the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to be the biggest threats to the Dodgers this season. Corbin Burnes hasn't really pitched up to his level yet, but if he gets healthy, I'm pretty sure Corbin Burnes is still Corbin Burnes, and the rotation's just pretty deep with Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, and maybe Eduardo Rodriguez starts to figure it out. But Corbin Carroll is a guy that kind of has tormented the Dodgers and maybe the rest of baseball, and he's having a really good start this season, leads the team with 11 home runs. Eugenio Suarez is kind of a power bat there, and then he just had a big 4 home run night just a few games ago, so the pop is there. And then they just got other guys like Perdomo, who's scrappy, and Josh Naylor, who they acquired to replace Christian Walker. Diamondbacks right now for me.
Yeah, and it's easy to go, well, look at the records. Look what they're in 4th. Who saw the Giants coming? We got to remember we can't. It's still early May, so all that the Diamondbacks have to do, aka real recently, is literally make the playoffs at this point, because then everything's reset at that point. And so they don't have to overtake the Dodgers. They don't have to overtake the Padres. I think the Giants will come back down to earth just a little bit. They're a good team. I look at a guy like Wilmer Flores. I'm like, man, we never gave him a chance, and look how he's producing there. But yeah, no, I can't. Now, this year, of course, I would say the Mets, and I'm not saying that because the Mets. Last year I would have put 9 teams, 10 teams above the Mets if I was being honest. I think the pitching for the Mets has been outstanding completely, and they're getting Sean Manaea back and stuff. So I wouldn't say the Mets, but I definitely can see the Diamondbacks being that other team, because they just haven't hit their stride yet. And it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And that's certainly a team, especially if they get Giants, Rockies late in the season and they start piling up some W's there. But again, all they got to do is get in. That's really all it comes down to. So now fast forward to this year. So of course, let me go ahead and read this list to those watching that may not know. But so the Dodgers right now, as of today, May 8th, they're 25-12, a game and a half up on both the Giants and the Padres. But they're without Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Teoscar Hernandez, of course, Clayton Kershaw, Michael Kopech's on the way back, and then Tommy Edman. So significant names on there. I think you kind of knew with Tyler Glasnow, you're going to get some injury time in there. It's kind of a given, aka Mike Trout. It's going to happen every year at some point. Hopefully it's not for too long. But of course, they still have a lot of names in that rotation, especially at some point if they get Kershaw back and they do go with a 6-man rotation, forget about it. But so I think they just need to weather the storm. So are you at all, is there one guy that you think, because of those injuries, whether it's a pitcher, whether it's a player or a batter, is there someone that we know who the top names are, but is there someone that you need to see step up to ensure that the Dodgers get to where they need to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. You didn't technically name him because he's not on the IL, but he is a two-way player. Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers are, I think, building this team around Shohei Ohtani pitching for them this season. And this offseason and the reports last year where they were optimistic he could come back to the rotation sometime in May. We're in May now, and he hasn't even thrown a rehab outing. I think best case scenario right now is the Dodgers would get Shohei Ohtani pitching around the trade deadline in actual major league games. And that was a big part of this 6-man rotation. And they seem to kind of strayed away from that until they get Ohtani back to pitching. And we all know how good and effective of a pitcher Shohei Ohtani is when he's on the mound. Historically has an ERA in the low 3s, can top off at, I think, 100 miles per hour. I'm not saying he's going to do that this go around, but that's actually my curveball answer. It's Shohei Ohtani, because on paper and based off his track record, you would imagine he is a guy you could lean on heavily to start postseason games.
I love that answer, and we're so on the same page because that's where I was going to go next. So perfect. So I love that answer for many reasons. But you think sometimes in a short series, or you think of in the postseason, you think of this guy's started game 1. This is game 3 or game 4. He's coming out to pitch the 8th inning. They have this advantage where they don't need to make a move at the deadline. They've got their moves already by just adding Ohtani to a rotation. And of course. You have Roki Sasaki has not scratched the surface of, potential there in terms of what he, ERA is just under 4. It's not terrible, but I still think we haven't seen the best of him, of course. And I think Dodger fans would say the same there. So no, you're absolutely right. You throw him on there, it's like, okay, that changes the game. So I think you're right, though. I think that they made a decision. They originally was going to be May, like you said, but I think trade deadline time frame is probably what we're going to see with that. And so it's going to be fun. I love, baseball is better. You say what you want about adding an extra team to the playoffs, but baseball is better when not everything is wrapped up at the beginning of September. So it's going to be a fun ride with 4 teams. You got to feel bad for the Colorado Rockies, though. Just shout out to those poor souls. I mean, 2-17 on the road this season, 2-8 at home, or 2-8 in their last 10, 4-13 at home. That's rough. And there's some teams in that division that haven't played the Rockies yet, so it's not good. Imagine if we were 4 or 5 years back when you were playing the division 18 and 19 times instead of the 12 to 13 that we see now. So,
right.
The White Sox are like happy that the Rockies are in the league because nobody's pointing the finger at them anymore. So what I want to ask you, so talking about on-field stuff. So, have you been to Dodger Stadium? And if you have, what is a must-do, something that if you're, someone going and maybe their only time going, something they have to either try, maybe it's a stadium eat, maybe it's a certain section, any kind of tips if you have been to Dodger Stadium?
I was just at Dodger Stadium on my birthday, actually, so April 25th. Paul Skeens versus Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Dodgers ended up losing that game. They got shut out, unfortunately. But the tips, definitely get there early, leave early, because the traffic is so bad trying to get to Dodger Stadium. So if you're thinking, I want to get there at 6, in your head, plan to leave at least a half hour earlier than what maybe Waze or Google Maps is saying, so that you can fight the crowd. And then when you actually get into Dodger Stadium, I feel like the stadium itself doesn't really offer anything that's like different than where you would go anywhere else. But I mean, you can walk around. They've got a cool setup, like behind all the seats or the main concourse, or whatever. There's statues and memorabilia and trophies and all that. So if you're kind of like a baseball historian, they've got a lot of that now going around Dodger Stadium, and they kind of commemorate a lot of the legends. So I guess that's my answer. And I think on the suite level, they've got a little museum as well, and you can see World Series trophy.
That's pretty cool. I know one of the ventures, I'm trying to get to all 30. I've only been to 6, so I got 24 to go. But last year I got to do Fenway. This year I was able to make it out to the Great American Ballpark, which was tremendous. The weather was beautiful. It was just a couple of weeks ago. I went to an evening game and then a day game after that. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm hoping to do 2 a year. So I'm hoping to get to Atlanta next because I'm in Florida. That's the closest. And so, but obviously with California, I'd probably have to figure out a creative way to knock out a bunch in one trip, of course. But one thing I'll share here when we're talking about stadiums, one of our guests that we had on, and he's filled in a couple times as a co-host. I'm not sure if you're familiar with baseball road tripper Tony Voda, but what he did was, and for those, maybe you do know, maybe you don't, or those watching, he was the first person. He went to the Boston Marathon game in Boston and saw the Red Sox with an 11 a.m. start time, got through the 7th or 8th inning of that game and caught a flight to go to Los Angeles to see the Dodgers play that evening. So he did a afternoon Red Sox game. And because, like you said, that traffic that you're up against, and not to mention if there's any kind of delay on the flight, you can miss the entire game. He stayed till the 7th or 8th inning, and he made it, I think, by the bottom of the 1st, so made it just in time. So that was then awesome. I was like, hey, what do you got next? He's like, I don't know if I can top that. I'm not quite sure you can. I was fortunate enough once to do a day-night doubleheader in New York. I did a Mets Padres and then a Yankees Red Sox evening. That was awesome, but that's like just a subway train ride away. That's not crossing the country. So shout out to him for that. That's a pretty remarkable feat for sure. A lot of pressure when you're on the airline, I'm sure, for that one. So, but what do you call it? I think so. I want to ask those two, and I'm not sure, how much. And if you don't have that much familiarity, that's fine. One thing I'm a huge proponent of is just keeping an eye on top prospects. So when I used to do fantasy baseball religiously, I've taken a couple of years off here, but I always would keep an eye. I wanted to make sure I got the guy on my roster before he got the call up, and so I love keeping an eye on some of the names and whatnot, just to kind of see who's out there. So there are MLB has the top 100 prospects. The Dodgers actually have 5 on that list, starting with Dalton Rushing, catcher outfielder. They got Jackson Ferris, Alex Freeland, Cypher Hope, DePaula outfielder. So is there anyone either there that I mentioned or anyone on your radar, if you are a prospect guy, that you're most excited for, either out of that list or maybe a name that's not on that list?
Your former Met, Michael Conforto, is really struggling for us. So I'm hoping if he can't turn it around, maybe the Dodgers call up Dalton Rushing and just give him the left field spot. That's one name. He's been pretty exciting. I actually had him on our show when he was first drafted by the Dodgers, so got to meet him a little bit and learn about him. In terms of other prospects, I already mentioned him earlier. He's still on the prospects list. River Ryan, who won't pitch this season, but when he comes back in probably the beginning of 2026, I really do think he's going to be one of the Dodgers' number 3 or number 4 guys. And he was, before the injury, even Fangraphs, I want to say, had him very high up there on their list. And then with the injury, of course, it set him back a little bit. But I'm really excited for River Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, a great answer there. I always just love, because I was a season ticket holder for the St. Lucie Mets. So they used to be the high A affiliate. Now they're the lower A. And I remember one time going to this was, again, back when the Dodgers would play in Florida and stuff. So we're talking ways back. And I didn't pay attention that day to who was going to be there. And usually 99 times out of 100, you go to a minor league game, you're going to see minor league players. Every once in a while, you get lucky and you'd see somebody rehabbing or something, right? And I get there and I look at the board and I thought I was crazy, but I look at the board and it said Clayton Kershaw versus Pedro Martinez. And it was a St. Lucie Mets game. I was like, what in the world's going on? And then I think John Maine, who used to be with the Mets as well, I think pitched game 2. It was like a doubleheader because they got rained out the day before or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty Andy Chavez, I think, was there. Oliver Perez came in from the bullpen. It was like, where am I right now? But so just thought I'd share that. I'm not sure where you are locally, but have you got an opportunity to see any kind of minor league games? Not necessarily maybe for the Dodgers, but just in general, are you a minor league guy, or is there not really one around you?
I actually have never been to a minor league game. I'm in Los Angeles, and I think the nearest one would be Rancho Cucamonga, which is like a good 90 minutes to 2 hours away. And then our AAA team and AA team are in Oklahoma. I've been to spring training a few times, so that's kind of been my taste of seeing the Dodgers prospects live in action and a lot of the up and coming arms that we have in our system. So, like, for example, 2 years ago, got to see Diego Cartaya play a lot, who at that time was the Dodgers' top prospect. He has since moved on and is considered now one of the biggest busts, unfortunately. But yeah, that's the closest to me watching minor leaguers live in person would be spring training.
Spring training, yeah. And you can't beat the spring training experience. I remember, I think it was 10 season ticket package for the Nationals because they were just the closest team to where I live. And I think it was like $202 for the whole. I think it was 15 games. It was like, this is so cheap. Now forget it. I think for Nationals, I think it starts at $52. They're a lot more expensive than some of the other teams for spring training, but they went to down south a little bit from where they are. But so is there, talking about ballparks and stadiums for just a minute, is there one that's on your list? Like if you were able to kind of pick one that you have not been to that's on the top there. I know for me, it's for whatever reason, I just want to see Pittsburgh. I know I got to see Fenway. I'm grateful for that, but Pittsburgh for me is right at the top. So I'm interested to see what you thought.
I've not been to Pittsburgh in general, but that one entices me. I guess my number one answer, Despite it being in the same state, I haven't been to the Giants' home stadium or Oracle Park. A lot of people that I talk to and you just read about it consider that one of the most beautiful parks in Major League Baseball, and it being along the bay, that sounds really cool too. So, and they have awesome foods like garlic fries and other neat San Francisco stuff. So I got to go with that one. One day I'll get it done. So I need to do that.
Yeah, it's always good to try to circle it on the calendar. Just try to, for me, one of the things I would love to do, like if I had my way, I always try to find that Thursday, Friday series. So that way you can, because it doesn't happen that often, but if you get lucky enough, you can see the team play someone on Thursday and then play a different one on Friday. So, but Thursday is the most common off day. So it doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while you can get lucky and make that happen. When I went to Cincinnati, they play the Mariners, and of course their big thing is the Skyline chili, which was okay. It wasn't gross. It wasn't great, because I've heard that they make it with noodles and stuff, but there it was just the cheese, the chili, and the nacho sauce and the chips. So I feel like they were missing the main ingredient. Something about they have a 3-way, 4-way, 5-way. I don't know. I just got it the way they made it. So it was okay, but that's what you have to try, I guess, when you go to Cincinnati. So I made sure that was the first thing I got when I was there. But the seats were great from that one. So that was, and where I live here, my wife is a big Tampa Bay Ray fan. And so we usually try to get there once. Now, obviously they're playing in Steinbrenner Field and everything's kind of wonky. It's kind of weird now because the Rays get a bad rap. Like, you think no one ever goes to the game, but I would say from the games I've went to, about 90% of the fans in attendance were Rays fans. ESPN and MLB, they would kind of have you believe that it's not. Now in Miami, completely the other way. Doesn't matter who the Marlins are playing. Those are the fans that are in the stadium, is the opposite team. Now that they're playing in Steinbrenner Field, you're seeing more of the opposition team fans there for whatever reason. It wasn't like that in the roofless dome that you call the Tropicana Field. And man, it doesn't do you justice. When you're driving up to Tropicana and you see the shape of this thing, it's just like, oof. And it's not so bad inside, but I'm still a proponent to move them to Orlando. Don't think it's going to happen. I know they have the Orlando Dreamers. They have like $1.2 billion set aside trying to get them there, but it's just not quite working out in Tampa. But I understand why they wouldn't want to leave there, but I would like to see it happen because it'd be closer to where I live and I get to go to more games. So, but
I was just going to say, I would recommend, if anyone's on the fence, Wrigley Field and Petco Park. Those are probably my two favorite that I've been to.
That's awesome. Yeah, of course, Wrigley Field. We were fortunate. We had Jonah Franklow on. He is a beer vendor, hot dog vendor for the Cubs, and it's cool. He does like a blog while working and does all this cool stuff. And we had him on, and it was just awesome to get to hear him. And Wrigley Dan, who's a season ticket holder, he was on the show, and it was, of course, that's like, I remember when first watching baseball games, that was the channel you'd watch the Cubs games. They always play in the afternoon. So seeing them, I know they lost the 2 opener games to the Dodgers. It feels like they played the Dodgers a lot already. Like because of the 2-game swing, I think they had 3 different series already, which is not common when you play opposite divisional opponents. But I just found that to be interesting. Let me ask you, did you stay up to watch those 2 games at the time that it was on? Or
I did. Woke up at 3 a.m. local time. So watched the full games, and this year was worth it.
Yeah, I would say so. I think you made the right choice. I stayed up for the first one, even though I didn't have it, a horse in the race. I was just like, it's a baseball game, Same thing if they, when they had the Field of Dream game, when they have those specialty things, even if it's not my team, I make sure I'm there to watch it. So I have to ask, as we still have about 5-10 minutes left here, so I want to make sure I get to this question. So one of the most fun things we love to do on the show when we get the opportunity is to talk Mount Rushmore. And so there's no right or wrong answers with these, of course, but it's always usually that third or that fourth person that you're like, I don't know who to put on there. I can go after you in this case, but I want to give you a minute to maybe get your 4 people there. But this could be any combination of pitchers, players, announcers, managers. Doesn't have to be. it's probably easier. And the tough part is like, how do you put someone like Jackie Robinson on the list if you didn't get to see him play in your lifetime? So it's subjective. So if you want to throw him on there or someone like it, cool. If not, and it's people that you've seen, doesn't have to be in person, but you've seen on your television set, that's fine too, because it's hard to judge. How do you how do you rank people you've never seen? So outside of just word of mouth and things like that. So no right or wrong answer there. So if you want to take a second, and then
I'm ready.
Okay.
I thought about this one long and hard, and maybe for some teams it's like you struggle to come up with the four. For the Dodgers, fortunately, it's almost impossible to narrow it down to four. So there are going to be some huge snubs, but the four that will be on there, and for quick reasons, Vince Scully has to be on there. I mean, probably the greatest broadcaster of all time, was with the Dodgers for 6 decades, 68 years or 60. I think it was like 60, something like that. So you have to have Vince Scully. Number 2, Jackie Robinson. Everything that he did to break the color barrier, and one of the greatest Dodgers players of all time as well. So I have to include Jackie Robinson. I'll sneak in my hot take one right now. Shohei Ohtani. I'm already projecting ahead. Shohei Ohtani is going to end up being the greatest Dodger of all time. Came to Los Angeles in year 1, won a World Series, had that iconic home run off Dylan Cease that I think completely changed the course of that series, even though it was in game 1 and I think in the second inning. But because Shohei Ohtani did that and had the 50-plus home runs, 50-plus stolen bases, and is already an MVP, like, we're already thinking ahead in the future here. Like, Shohei Ohtani has to be on there. And then it's probably between Sandy Koufax or Clayton Kershaw. But because Sandy Koufax won more World Series and arguably may have been the better pitcher, and most certainly in the playoffs, I got to put Sandy Koufax on there. So it's crazy that I don't have Kershaw on my Mount Rushmore, but here we are.
It's funny you say that, because with you can make the argument that Kershaw is the best pitcher of our time. Like he legit, not just because of length, but just dominance. I think, there's a couple you can make in that case. Health reasons didn't quite work out, but Jacob deGrom was kind of in that elusive group and like, wow, these arms. There's a few others, but I definitely, the other fun thing with these two is, like you mentioned, you had your person in there, Shohei Ohtani. You had to sneak him in because it's undeniable that's going to be. So I will share mine, and it's not too different except for one, and I'm probably fanboying a little bit for the one that I put in there that maybe doesn't quite deserve it, but it's just where I went to. So so I have my list here. So of course, Vince Scully, top of the list. Totally agree with that one. I went with Jackie Robinson as well. Again, I also went with Sandy Koufax over Clayton Kershaw, which just felt odd. And now the last spot, I probably should have put Duke Snider on there, but because length of time, the individual's name I'm going to share definitely doesn't have the longevity, but because the significance of what happened in a short amount of time, and just the dominance there, I'm going to go with Eric Gagne. Outside the box, I know, but just unbelievable talent. So no one's going to penalize me for saying that. So I'm going to go ahead and throw him on there. So it does feel weird looking at him. Like, how do I not have Duke Snider and Clayton Kershaw on the Dodgers list? But there's just so many people, and that we're leaving off others too that could be on there. So I think there's one team that we did. We've done pretty much most of the teams. There's a couple left we haven't done, and there was only one team where it was like, it's these 4 guys. There was no, like, it wasn't even a thing. But it's always seems to be like 1 or 2 people that just throw it off the loop there. So.
I did not expect Eric Gagne, but I respect it. Funny enough, is I think at least Kenley Jansen's going to end up going into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So then by default, the Dodgers will retire number 74. And then probably history speaking, Kenley Jansen will be remembered as the Dodgers' greatest closer of all time. But in that short window, Eric Gagne probably had the more dominant time horizon.
Yeah, I think it's more like, when you go to the theater and you're like, oh, this movie was the best, but it's like in your mind because it's recent, so it's probably there because it's semi-recent. I know it's more like 99 to 07, so again, not a relatively crazy long amount of time, but those 3 years, 2002 to 2004, how good would it have been to play Eric Gagne in a video game back in those years? It would have been ridiculous. Now, it's funny with video games. I was never really a video game guy, but I always loved the baseball games. I was never good with the stars. Like I remember, I think it was one season I played, and it was, who was it? I think it was Tyler Houston, Timo Perez, Jay Payton, and maybe Todd Zeal. And I had like 65 home runs with these people. I'm like, it was, but then I would hit with like Babe Ruth or something and get like 4, so it's funny how the video games would work back in the day. But I imagine pitching with Gagne must have been in that setting must have been a lot of fun for sure. Always like when they would bring guys from the past in and coordinate them in the games and stuff like that. I always thought that was pretty neat for sure. So yeah, to kind of as we start wrapping this things up, any other story or anything that comes to mind, maybe in person or anything like that, that you want to share, anything like that? I know it's hard to kind of think back longevity because you've been a fan for so long, but is there like maybe there's a game moment that you had to pick up the phone, call someone, you're shouting at your TV screen? I know for me, I'll start with me first. For Dodger, when it was Dodgers Rays, I think it was in the World Series, I think it was 2020, actually, that crazy ending. The Rays wound up winning that game. That is ridiculous how it ended with Brett Phillips and Rosarina and that craziness, and everyone was dead asleep. And my wife's the Rays fan, so I don't really have a horse in the race, but I'm just jumping up and down for whatever reason, like 11:45 p.m. Just like, I can't believe that just happened. So is there a moment for you like that in a particular game?
Yeah. So I got a 2-part answer. I'll make them quick. So 2015, you can relate to this. NLDS, Dodgers, Mets. I was in attendance for both games 1 and game 2. Saw Jacob deGrom just absolutely shove. And I think that was kind of the game that put Jacob deGrom more from just well-known in New York to more on a national level. And then game 2, I believe his last name was Iglesias, the shortstop. Or no, Ruben Tejada, sorry.
Tejada, yeah.
Ruben Tejada was the casualty in the Chase Utley slide. And it was a different experience being there because it was just kind of like dead silence. Nobody really knew what was happening. I think they were reviewing the play itself. And then when the umpire ruled that Utley was safe and then whoever was at first base was safe, that just completely like shifted the momentum in the Dodgers direction.
So good. Yep.
And Bartolo Colon came out of the bullpen and we just pummeled him. And then, of course, the Mets go on to win the series, but just wanted to share that. My main moment, though, has to be, of course, game 1 of the 2024 World Series.
Yes.
Freddie Freeman. It's a little more different for me because I had just come home from the hospital a few days prior. I actually watched almost the entire NLCS in the hospital because my wife gave birth to our firstborn daughter. So we watched games 2 through, I think, game 5, I want to say 4 games. I think that's 4 games were in the hospital. And so it was just like such a weird thing. Like my daughter was just born. My wife was recovering from her C-section. I had to sleep on some crappy like sofa thing. And I just wait for these games on like a poor quality TV. So all that happening, then we get home and our daughter is like kind of sleeping on the table and like a little bouncy thing, and she's like maybe 4 days old at this point. The Freeman grand slam happens. And there's a bunch of relatives over. No one really was paying attention to the game, and they didn't understand the magnitude of this moment until I explained it to them. And fortunately, I guess the little daughter baby was asleep the whole time. So all the screaming and shouting didn't wake her up.
Didn't wake her up. And that, folks, that is a statement win. Like when that home run, when that happened, that clinched the series to me, at least. Like it was just like, okay, that was, you had the Kirk Gibson flashbacks there of not quite the same, but the same, like injury, goes out there, does, it's just crazy. Just what a moment. I remember forgetting that I wasn't a Dodger fan. I'm like, oh, like, but because especially as a Mets fan, I really didn't have a team I wanted. I was just happy it wasn't Braves, Yankees, so that made me happy at least. But so I'm gonna throw one last curveball question that wasn't on the cheat sheet. I'm gonna just have fun with it. My last question of the night. So, who is the one Dodger that should have been that the career didn't turn out the way it was supposed to? I'll go with the Mets first, and then I'll leave it up to you. So for me, in my lifetime at least, was Cespedes. I don't know what in the world went wrong with that guy, but he went off the deep end, and it did not quite. All I remember is the bright colors and the lack of hustle, and then just the randomness that he was. I really expected so much more. Didn't pan out. So I think I may know where you're going because you did say his name earlier, but you may go somewhere else. But let's see what you say.
I'm drawing a blank. Well, first, which name did you think I was going to say?
So for me, at least, just on the short time that I saw him play and the potential was Yasiel Puig. I think to me would have been the guy, and he obviously everything happened there. But that's who I would say. But I'm not a Dodger fan, so
that's a really good one. Man, someone that I was super disappointed with. I don't know if this is the best answer, but I have it now. Cody Bellinger. I thought Cody Bellinger was almost like on the pure path of being a Hall of Famer. After that 2019 season, I was like, we have found our franchise player. We are going to pay him probably $400 million. Like, he is a phenomenal center fielder. That MVP season I was just referencing, I was like, we just found our 40 home run guy every season. And then 2020 happens. Didn't have really the best regular season, but it was also the COVID year. A lot of guys weren't putting up their traditional numbers, smaller sample size too, of like 60 games. But then he had that huge NLCS Game 7 home run off Chris Martin to put the Dodgers ahead. And that was just such a huge moment for Cody Bellinger and made up for kind of the abysmal season. But then during that celebration, he locks arms with Kike Hernandez and dislocates and kind of tears his shoulder, which he then had to get off-season shoulder surgery. And then he was just awful in 2021, but I gave him a pass because I know that the time horizon to recover from those type of years or surgeries takes like a full year. But then he was also terrible again in 2022, and most people didn't believe me, but I was telling everyone they're going to non-tender him. Like, they have to, because he's just playing so bad. And then that's what ends up happening. They non-tender Cody Bellinger. So we go from a guy that I thought was like potentially a Hall of Famer, franchise player. They're going to back up the Brinks trucks to pay him, to getting non-tendered.
Yeah, I remember specifically getting frustrated on many occasions in fantasy drafts, wanting to, because he would go in the first round. Like, that's how good he was. And the guy in front of me 2 years in a row, same dude, took him. And I remember and this is prime time years, I remember being frustrated. And I wound up, whoever I got was fine, but I was just, that's the worst when they take your guy when you're ready. You don't have a backup because that's who you're going for, and then they get you. So, but no, great answer there. So, of course, so guys, as we start rounding up, Los Angeles Dodgers, of course, postseason contender this year, World Series contender. I'm thinking we're going to see. I'm thinking we're going to see Dodgers Mets once again. I think it's going to come down to, and I could be wrong, completely wrong, but I'm going a Dodgers Guardians World Series this year. I think the Guardians, there's something to almost making it and getting that experience in the postseason. So if I had to put money down and not on my own team, I would say Dodgers Guardians. Hopefully it's not the Dodgers. Hopefully it's the Mets. But that would be my biggest pick there is Dodgers Guardians. So I know you said final question, but who do you see the Dodgers playing in the World Series this year? Who's coming out of the AL?
I'm going to be consistent and not let records change my preseason prediction. Dodgers versus the Texas Rangers. I am a big believer in their rotation. I think Jacob deGrom can stay healthy for the vast majority of this year. And if you get him in October, you know how big of a weapon he is. And Tyler Mahle is having a nice season. I want to see a little bit more from Jack lighter. I think he needs to really
agree.
take that next step as a former top prospect. So Corey Seager.
And unfortunately, Mariners fans, it's always the same. Come September 1st, they lose 17 out of 23, and a team like the Rangers will flip-flop, and the Astros will always be there. They're just like that pesky gnat that won't go away. But the Rangers, I agree with you. I think the Rangers are going to win the division. I know they're in 4th as of this recording, but it's May 8th, guys, so that's not crazy. Rangers are the team to beat in that division, so I like that pick as well. So thanks, guys, for joining us. I see there's 15 of you still on, so thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. Thank you, Kevin. We had a great time. Sorry Darren had to miss this one, but back for the next. And best of luck to you with the podcast. Once again, if you could, I know you did at the beginning, but one more time, can you just drop the where they can find you on social media one more time, and then we'll wrap things up.
Of course, yeah. We do our Dodgers show, the Incline Dodgers podcast, usually once or twice a week. You can find that on social media if you just look up the Incline Pod or the Incline Dodgers, and should be easy to find us. And we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and yeah, we're there.
Awesome. So once again, thank you, Christopher Bennett and team. Really appreciate you guys supporting us here on the podcast, Natural Tax Solutions. And until next time, we'll see you around the ballpark. Bye, guys.